egg precursor cells into eggs. And now let's call it 10,000. You have 10,000 eggs. Average male ejaculation has about 1 billion sperm cells. Fertilize 10,000 eggs using an automated process, grow them for about 5 days, extract a few cells from each of those 10,000 pre-implanted embryos, sequence them, and the process of having a baby is the process of saying, well, here are my priorities. So I want optimum health span. And then what are the other things that people may want? High IQ, which correlates with a lot of things parents want for their children, personality style. Anything that has a genetic foundation will be selectable. That doesn't mean you'll necessarily get what you select, but this will all be based on percentages. And all of this is going to be propelled by the fact that we live in very diverse societies. Within societies, even people I see on your faces, some people are a little more excited, some people are a little terrified by what I'm saying, and both of them are legitimate responses. And internationally, there are countries like the United States where people are a little more squeamish about this, countries like China where they are less so. And we live in this extremely competitive environment. I have a Korean friend. He has 12 tutors a week coming to his house for his 11-year-old daughter. And when I said, if you could select embryos to give your future child a 15-point bump in IQ, would you do it? And he looked at me like I was a lunatic. Like, who wouldn't do that? And there are many other people who would say, well, that's playing God. We should never do that. And because we live in these competitive environments, there are going to be some people in some countries opting in, which is already happening, and there are going to be some people in some countries opting out. And how are we going to think about that? And this is obviously going to raise some fundamental ethical issues. My parents are here in the back of the audience. My father and grandparents came to the United States in 1948 as refugees fleeing Nazism. But if you had asked the Nazis what they were doing, the answer they would have given is, we are implementing Darwinism. That's the core of Nazism. And for people like me who are trying to say, this science is coming, we need to think of it not as a science question, but as an ethics question, it's really challenging. I was on a panel in Berkeley with this wonderful poet whose life had been defined by his having a daughter with Down syndrome. And it was really difficult for me to say that, which I believe that in 20 years from now, seeing a child with Down syndrome is going to be like today when you see a child with polio. It's like, it's not that it's unnatural to have polio, but you think, wow, there was a mix-up, there was a problem. That's why this kid has polio, because kids shouldn't have polio. And kids already in Northern Europe, Down syndrome is pretty much eliminated just because of non-invasive prenatal testing and abortion. So if that's already happening, and abortion is extremely excruciating, when people are making selections about which of their pre-implanted embryos in a lab to implant, you have to assume that people are going to make choices. But those choices, we have to recognize, don't exist in a vacuum. This is not some kind of world where it's just objective and valueless. This is all about values. And we're going to have to struggle with issues like equity. Who has access to these incredibly powerful technologies that can change people's lives? Diversity. We think of diversity as a way of having better workplaces and better universities, but diversity is much more. Diversity is the sole survival strategy of our species, and of every species, because if we didn't have diversity, it's not that we would still be single-cell organisms. We would be nothing, because the reason those single-cell organisms evolved into us is that when they faced adversity, there was diversity. So even if we all make decisions that seem like a great idea, like eliminating deadly diseases, if you have a sickle cell disease, you're going to die. If you're a recessive carrier of the sickle cell mutation, you have increased resistance to malaria. How many diseases, or how much carrier status do we have in our bodies that is healthy in a way, but is exposing us to risk now that could be protective in the future? We have no way of knowing it, because there's no good and bad in evolution. There's just being particularly well suited for the environment you're in, and those environments change. And we are all right at the beginning of this fundamental transformation that is going to change everything. And we can imagine a really good scenario where we use these technologies to cure disease, to help us live healthier, longer, more robust lives, to unlock potential of letting people have 10 or 20, 30 more years of, as Sandra was just saying, of brain health. And that, imagine how much love, how much innovation, how much creativity it's going to really help us. And we can also imagine these dystopian outcomes where it's really terrible, where we are making this world much worse. And the difference between the good outcomes and the bad outcomes is us. It's our values. It's how we fight to have our values integrated into the decision-making process that is happening now. So on an individual level, everybody needs to be educated. This is such an important issue. People understand that AI is important. People understand that climate change is important. Very few people understand the genetics revolution. My book, Hacking Darwin, which just came out, actually you can see this little slide coming. And so I've written that. There it is. It's my friend's little daughter. It's designed so if you can read one book to kind of get it, this is it. But I don't want you to just read my or any other books, which you should. But once you get educated, everybody has to be a hub of a bigger conversation. You all have your families, your colleagues, your faith communities, and others. And you need to be part of not just talking to people about what's coming, but engaging people in a process of struggling with these issues, because there are no easy answers. But we know that the wrong answer is to sit back and say this is somebody else's problem. We need to ask tough questions to our elected officials. What are you doing to try to build a healthy, supportive, regulatory environment that can optimize the good outcomes and minimize the downsides? And we need to all be part of that process. I'm part, as Shane said, of the World Health Organization International Advisory Committee on Human Genome Editing. And in Geneva, we're meeting 6 times this year. We're really struggling with this issue, and we actually put out a statement today. But it's not enough for the scientists, for the governments, for the international organizations even, to be making these decisions. What we are talking about is the future of our species, and that is all of our concern. We know how agitated people get on issues like genetically modified crops. We are at the beginning of the era of genetically modified humans, and the genetically modified humans have already shown up. The world's first 2 gene-edited babies were born in China last year. There's another one that probably has already been born, but if not, will be born in the next couple of weeks. Also in China, a Russian doctor has announced plans. He has 5 couples lined up to have more genetically engineered babies. The era of genetically modified humans is here. And it cannot be that 10 years from now, when this hits, when this is the most important issue in the world, all of us say, hey, I wasn't consulted. These big decisions have been made about the future of our species, and I wasn't consulted. If that happens, we're going to have riots. The way that we prevent that is everybody being educated, everybody recognizing that we are all hubs, and what we need is a global, species-wide, inclusive dialogue on the future of human genetic engineering that can lead to global norms, that can lead to global regulations. It sounds crazy. We heard the quote earlier about social movements, and we've had some success with issues like chemical weapons and biological weapons and nuclear weapons, and even imperfectly with climate change. This is our future, but if we all don't feel the future is up to us, we're going to be in big trouble. Thank you. Thank you.
You think Rave is going to be short? Where are you? Everybody.
Whatever it is, it's exquisite, and we really look forward to it. But I want to thank you all for your patience and all the speakers for all these interruptions. But we have a lot. We have one more thing to look forward to.
Should we do a dance break? No, let's not. There's going to be snacks outside. There already is, but don't go now. There's some great water, hydrogen water. There's book signing. I'm here to introduce our next speaker, Rave Mehta. Rave is a wonderful human. He happens to be my friend, so I'm very honored to be here. Introducing Rave, you're going to have an experience, and we heard earlier about how much experiences shift your brain. And so I am personally going to go lay under his piano later, and I want to invite anyone who wants to do that to join me. It's going to be very cool. So Rave is an engineer, an entrepreneur, and an inventor, and an innovator, as well as an award-winning pianist. Say that out loud, everybody. Pianist. Not a pianist? Pianist. It's very important. You have to be careful. He's an award-winning pianist. He's the founder of the Flow Labs and has spent 15 plus years researching the science behind fear and flow to gain a deeper understanding of how we can transcend our boundaries and access more of our superpowers. Ooh. Rave applied these insights to his creative endeavors, including music, and has performed around the world, integrating the principles of flow into his piano sound baths to help others drop into a deep healing state for a unique sound meditation experience. We were going to have a sound bath on Sunday, and just a little announcement, that's not happening this Sunday, only because Rave has to go to Carnegie Hall. Of course, we have high-level speakers here, but he will be doing that August 11th. Will you please join me in welcoming Rave to the stage?
Thank you. Is this on? Oh, great. So I have to admit, I feel a little guilty that I actually have slides, and the last few didn't. So, but I actually spent a lot of time working on these. I have 47 slides I have to get through in 10 minutes, so I'm going to start pummeling through now. So I founded Flow Labs, and part of what we do is we do research and experimental experiences and how we could tap into flow and harness flow to kind of exercise our innate abilities to not only exercise higher degrees of performance, but also how we could tap into that to heal ourselves and exercise higher degrees of homeostasis. And my story starts on how I discovered flow with this book. This is a graphic novel I wrote called The Inventor, based on a true story of Nikola Tesla and how him and Thomas Edison battled it out in the late 1800s to figure out which technology, AC or DC, would power the planet. And I had a movie deal with a big movie studio to turn this into a movie, and I had the world in the palm of my hand. And 2 weeks before we were about to close, they merged with another entertainment company, and everybody on the film side that I was working with got fired. So my deal just went away. And then 2 weeks later, I got struck with Lyme disease. So my entire world came crashing down on me. So if anyone knows anyone that's had Lyme disease, it's one of the most hardest diseases to diagnose, and it's even harder to treat. And I started by losing 30 pounds in a month. I had blindness bouts that would happen just throughout the day. I would have heart palpitations around every corner. I felt like I could have a heart attack at any point in time. And there'd be nights I'd wake up in the middle of the night just gasping for air because my body forgot how to breathe. I had to create manual breathing rhythms until it synced back up. And these are some of the other symptoms I had to go through. So I went through 3 months of doctors, of tests, hospitals, and all sorts of things, and nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And their final conclusion was, we think you have anxiety, here's some Prozac. So I knew that wasn't the answer, but I didn't know what was. So I literally did not think I'd survive 2012, which is when this happened. So I thought my last act on this planet was going to be to release this graphic novel I spent 2 years working on, and maybe inspire some kid to continue his research or move into science. So I convinced the publisher to let me release it at Comic-Con. I had 3 days of book signings. I missed the first 2 days because I was too sick to show up. And the last day I showed up, there was this long line of people waiting for me to sign the book, which I was surprised. And as I started doing the book signing, within the first 10 minutes, my body felt normal for the first time. My brain fog went away, my joints tightened up, my muscles felt solid, and I thought to myself, wow, this is what it felt like to be healthy. It's been 7 months on this downward spiral, and I almost forgot. About 25 minutes into it, I felt like I just went skydiving. I was high, had this adrenaline rush. Everything was vibrant. People looked beautiful again. I was like, gosh, I really want to live. So it gave me hope, and I thought to myself, well, maybe if I could figure out what's happening here, I could hack this mystery illness and cure myself and heal myself. So I spent the next 4 years visiting over 40 health practitioners from various modalities, technologists, scientists, anyone on the fringe, to learn how they look at the mind-body system and how they treat it. And one of the things I ran into in this process was some research on flow states through my friend Stephen Kotler. And he talks about how action-adventure athletes defy death, break world records, do these superhuman things by tapping into flow. And as I started practicing and exercising, getting into these states, I would get better while I was in these states, but these states would only last for these moments, up to an hour most. And I'd fall back down into my default baseline state, which was very low and non-functional. So I thought to myself, well, I need to figure out how to raise this baseline, because that's where I'm operating at, not these peak performance moments. So I essentially thought back to, well, what was happening when I was signing these books and I felt normal for the first time? And I realized there's all this love and appreciation people were giving me for putting this book, this piece of art into the world. And I realized, wow, love is actually what was inducing flow in me at that point in time. And I was like, if love was inducing flow in me, what is flow? I know what the effects of flow are when you're in a flow state. You have dopamine, you have non-epinephrine, you have all these neurotransmitters kicking in, making your reaction time so much faster, your brain processes information faster, but what's the source of it? And after a lot of thinking and research and experimenting, I kind of came to the conclusion, flow is really our life force, right? And there, in East Asia, we call this chi. India, we refer to as prana. George Lucas calls it the force. UCSB is starting to do research now on life force, and they're referring to it as the biofield. So I thought, okay, so how do I increase the amount of life force I'm getting into my body? Because that's essentially what's keeping me up and alive. So as I tracked this further, I realized that my emotional states had a lot to do with it. So if I was experiencing fear-based emotions like anxiety, anger, jealousy, insecurity, things like that, I would contract this pipe to accessing more of this flow. And if I was experiencing trust-based emotions like gratitude, humility, courage, I'd be expanding this pipe to access more of this flow, and I'd function better. So I realized, okay, my mindset has a lot to do with how much flow I access. What else is there? Well, I narrowed it down to 5 major things on what I spent my time optimizing my life around to access more flow. So the mind was the first thing. The second is the body, and we heard a lot about that today. The diet, the stuff we put in and on our body had an incredible impact on if it was going to block my access to getting more flow or open me up to getting more flow. Social interactions, people. I found that the more I interacted with people when I went to yoga classes versus doing yoga on my own, or going to birthday parties, things like that, I actually was feeding off people and my body felt normal. The minute I started isolating myself is when my body would start crashing again. So I found that social interactions actually helped feed me flow. The environment was another one. The more I spent time outside in nature, I was feeding off of the flow that was in nature. And then lifestyle. Everything from our circadian rhythms that I would tap into, from when I'd wake up to go to bed, times I would eat, all that had an impact. And the thing that had the most impact on me that I was surprised was all the creative projects and endeavors I was doing. The more creative things I was doing, the better I felt. And one of the things I did was play the piano. So I started playing the piano more, and the more I played, the better I felt, and the better I felt, the more I played. So that inspired me to say, hey, I wonder if I could multiply this flow idea and get more people in on it. So I created this show called Flow, which is like yoga mixed with Cirque du Soleil, my piano concert. So I was able to gather a bunch of dancers, contortionists, aerialists, performers to do a piano concert with me. And we do these at performing arts centers around the country. And we turned yoga into performing arts, essentially. And by the end of the 3-month run, I actually became asymptomatic of Lyme. It felt like it boosted my immune system so high that I didn't have any more symptoms and I was good. So I was like, wow, there's something here I need to really tap into or learn more about. So I would be practicing one day, and a lot of what I do is improvise, and I'd be just jamming on my piano when there are people around. And one day I looked up and all 6 people were passed out. And I was thinking to myself, oh man, maybe they got bored of my music, maybe I've been playing that same thing too long. And as they came to, they started telling me that, wow, I felt like I was teleported here, or I had this emotional release and all these wild dreams and crazy experiences, and it happened over and over again. And I thought to myself, wow, I wonder if this is a thing. I wonder if instead of doing a show now, maybe I could turn this into an experience, a flow experience. So I started organizing these piano sound baths, and I've moonlighted as a piano shaman. So I started these, and first it was like 10 and 20 people that would come, and then over time, it started growing, to 30, 50, hundreds, and then at some point it hit over 1,000. And people were really coming and connecting with these piano meditation concerts, which who would have ever thought, right? So And what I do is I'd improvise and play for about an hour while people lay down and just drop in and let go and allow themselves to access flow and then allow me to feed them. And their letting go was feeding me, so it created a complete feedback loop, a closed loop system in the flow world. So this it started catching on, and until most recently I got invited to perform at Carnegie Hall, which will be the first time, which is this Tuesday, which is the first time in their 125-year history that they're actually having a musical meditation experience. Thank you. So what's interesting is I would have hundreds of people come back to me with what their experiences were, ranging from, gosh, I was dancing blissfully across the cosmos like I was on some psychedelic, to I had all this emotional releases. I was crying the whole time. I just released 15 years of trauma from my father passing away, to a whole other group saying that, gosh, I had all this pain that went away that's been there for 3 months, or even a significant relief in symptoms from their diseases. So I was thinking to myself, gosh, is this really that powerful? So I know, I've done a lot of research in meditation and know that there's a lot of benefits to meditation, from regenerating brain cells if you do it 20 minutes a day for 8 weeks. They've proven, they have studies on that. And also how it decreases inflammation in the body. But what about music? So I started looking at some of the research around music, and I found some interesting things. Music's one of the only things that actually lights up your entire brain. This is a brain image of someone listening to an Argentine tango track out of Finland, and it not only lights up the auditory systems, but entire other networks in your brain are lit up just by listening. There's another study that was done. Turns out that people that are highly empathetic, which is about 20% of the population, actually process music differently than those that are not. And they actually gain much more pleasure out of listening to music because it lights up their social networks in their brain. And I found this study, which was interesting, in Switzerland, how they're using music to actually build the brains of very premature babies. And they're finding that by putting, if you can see the headphones on them, by having them listen to music, it actually increases their motor skills significantly. And then there's therapy that's done by, a study by NYU showing how they're using therapy to actually significantly reduce pain, depression, anxiety, and even shortness of breath and other symptoms in patients in hospices. So all this started lining up with the feedback I've been getting. So I was like, wow, maybe there is something to music. And what if we combine music with meditation? What can we do with that? So we started wiring some people up during some of our sound baths and tracking brainwaves and heart rates. And some of the things that we found that was interesting is all the heart rates would drop down to their level of homeostasis, as you'd expect when people are getting relaxed. But what was interesting is 15 minutes roughly into the concert, they latched onto the tempo of how I was playing, and they all moved up and down with my tempo. So I went from being a piano shaman to being a piano Pied Piper. And so we're now actually designing a study right now to actually take this further and do an epigenetic examination to see, take blood before and after to see what inflammatory genes we can turn off during these sound baths. So we're working on that now. So we know music can help us tap into flow, but what I really care about, what I'm really interested in, is can music really become medicine? And if so, can we make it prescriptive? And every ounce in my body says the answer is yes. Thank you. So now I'm going to give you guys a little experience of a piano sound bath. It's going to be a short one, 10 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes. And I invite you to close your eyes if you like. You're welcome to leave them open too. And I'll improvise this piece, but at the end of the piece, I will bring you back to the room with the sound of my voice, okay? And before we start, I just want to create a quick connection with you, and I'd like to ask you all to take one giant deep breath with me. Okay, all you have to do is just enjoy the music. Yeah, you're welcome to lie down if you like to get the full experience. Okay, I will. I won't step on you. And you could probably, okay, cool. Oh, this is so cool. Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, if you didn't, then that'd be great. That's good. I'll wake you up. That's fine. No, that's good. That's good right there. I need to see the keys. welcome. You're welcome to join us back in the room. Oh, you're welcome. Oh, so good. Well, thank you so much, guys. That was just as beautiful for me as it was for all of you. And I hope to see you, I guess, the last slide, on Sunday, August 11th at 2 to 4 in Aspen Chapel. I'll come back and do a full 1 hour long piano sound bath. So namaste. Thank you.
What a great way to wrap up. I just wanted to thank everybody again for coming. There's book signing out there. You see that the Aspen Chapel Flow will now be Sunday on the 11th, and we already have a date for next year's AspenBrainLab. It is Saturday, July 18th at the Hotel Jerome, and somebody has promised that the power won't go out again. So thank you again. We have a thank you present for you for doing such a great job with AspenBrainLab.